Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'd like to welcome the public to another session of Quarantine Racism Educational Services. We are on weekly at this time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And I am honored to have a special guest today. As a matter of fact, our special guest is one of our brand ambassadors. And so, would you take a few minutes and just introduce yourself?
Thank you, Dr. Campbell. I'm honored to be with you here today, and I appreciate the opportunity to serve as the brand ambassador with Quarantine Racism and Education Service Company that's trying to promote racial equity in education. My name is Dr. Mishkat Al Moumin. I'm originally from Iraq. My learning education paved the way to who I am today. I started by, being among the 10 female students studying law at the law school in Iraq. And the first day at law school, oftentimes students, are excited. Students want to learn. That was not my experience. The professor enters the classroom, looked at the first row of women, in the classroom, and he said, "What are you women doing here? Go to the nursing school where you belong." So finding my belongingness, finding the sense that I belong, is the reason that led me to quarantine racism and led me to establish the Communication of Success, another company that is trying to help educators and nonprofit leaders who specialize in education to tell their story, find growth opportunities, and progress in these challenging times.
Very good. Thank you very much, Dr. Moomin. Um, what does racial equity in education mean to you?
Racial equity means that everyone should have the opportunity to succeed. They should have all the resources they need, all the tools they need, regardless of their race or gender. By that, I mean those who need more resources, they should have access to these resources. And those who need more tools, they should be provided with these tools. I'm
Mhm.
not trying to talk the talk here, but back when I worked at the Defense Language Institute, I established the Early Intervention Board aimed at catching students who are starting to, lose track of their academic goals and put them back on track by providing resources. So the board was not, kind of a check mark before disenrolling the student, but in fact, an opportunity to enroll or to re-enroll, re-engage with the program.
Mhm.
I convened the military, leaders as well as the civilian leaders. As you know, it was a military institute, but taught by or administered by civilians
Mhm.
in the classroom. So, providing students with the tools to achieve their academic goals, regardless of race or gender, this is what education should be all about.
Very good. Um, we have elements in our society today that desire to better educate non marginalized students. What do you say to them?
Equity will always be the answer. If you give more to those who have more, you are not doing them any favor. In our classrooms, as educators, when we differentiate instruction, when we challenge the student who is excelling in the classroom, while at the same time providing an opportunity to the students who needs to meet their academic goal, we are not taking from someone to give to someone else. We are providing an opportunity for both parties to achieve their academic goals. If there is a student who is doing well, giving them more will not help them excel. In fact, they may relax and take it for granted.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, you are not providing the one who needs the resources with the opportunity to meet their academic goals. That's why we need to make it equitable. We need to help those who needs our help in the most meaningful way by creating opportunities for them to succeed. And I'd like to take a moment to maybe engage educators around the idea of democratization of the curriculum. It has nothing to do with the Democratic Party, by the way, just a disclaimer. But it has to do with making the curriculum relatable and meaningful to students by giving them voice. By the end of the day, you are educating the next generation of leaders. You want them to voice their opinion, you want them to be part of the education process. If the education process is one way, I'm the teacher, I'm the dictator, I'm who's going to tell you how to learn, when to learn it, and what to do with it. That doesn't work. Research shows that we all learn differently
Mm-hmm.
and we all reproduce what we've learned differently. And that's why in the society, you have teachers, you have engineers, entrepreneurs, businessmen, you have everything. It cannot be the production of one-way street. It has to be two-way street.
Very good, very good. Now, you briefly talked about your experience in Iraq, and I just want to kind of dig a little deeper into that experience because I'm let me just ask the question. So, how has your experience at it in Iraq shaped your understanding of racism, discrimination, and environmental justice?
Honestly, Dr. Campbell, it was a very uphill battle, starting from elementary school when, again, on my first day, and I don't know what's with the first day and me, but back when I started my educational journey, my teacher, decided to slap me on my face, from day one.
Mm,
The reason she gave was I was writing with my evil hand. I'm a left handed person. I write with my left, but I use my right for everything else, including erasing my mistakes. There were other students, and I still recall vividly, who used their left hand to write, but she picked on me because I looked slightly different than the rest of the class.
mm,
I'm not sure what was her rationale, but my mother, she used to be a teacher. She passed away 2007. She stood up for me.
mm,
She immediately, next day, went to the teacher and argued with her. And she told her, if you lay a finger on my child again, you have to deal with me first. Learning through punishment was simply my experience, whether it was elementary school or whether it was, the law school. But the matter of fact that I continued, I didn't stop. I was the only female student who studied, postgraduate. I earned my master and my doctoral. And I always get picked on
Mm-hmm.
to answer sudden questions, to be given unsolvable law cases, including, what should we do if the UN decided to trade in drugs? So these hypotheticals were thrown at me because I'm the female in the classroom, because I'm the different person in the classroom, because I don't belong there according to the norms.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of opened my eye to the importance of inclusion, allowing everybody the opportunity to seek education. And my experience, further motivates me to create better environments for my learners, because I decided to become an educator starting from Iraq when I joined the same law school that rejected me.
Mm-hmm.
And in the process, I created a safe environment for my learners to say their opinions. So I didn't ask them to recite the information, like the norm is in Iraq. Here is the book, memorize it, recite it back to me, you are done.
Mm-hmm.
I employed case studies, I employed discussion groups,
Mm-hmm.
opinions, and compare and contrast different case studies so as the learner can maximize their learning. The I ensured that my voice is not the only one. We are all equals, we are all partners in this journey called learning, and I want to learn from you just like you want to learn from me. Not only I achieved my professional goals, but I achieved success. My success rate using this method of teaching boomed. Back when I'm, in my early days moving to the United States, I settled in DC. And
Mm-hmm.
out of the blue, someone start, talking to me and greeting me. And, I vaguely can remember them because the classes were so large. I had 500 students, sitting in one class at a time. And the gentleman was so kind to remind me that he was one of my students. He still remembers our discussions and case studies, and he thanked me for the method I used for teaching. And I brought this method with me to the United States when I started teaching, not only at the Defense Language Institute, but at George Mason, Johns Hopkins, and I try to engage, continues to try to engage students in discussions because we learn from discussion. We don't learn from memorization or we don't learn from cold facts. We
Mm-hmm.
learn from breaking them down in many ways, not only through discussions but through technology tools such as nearpod, padlet, and other engagement tools that are available to us now. We are so lucky to have these tools, for us to use and engage our learners, to create a community of learners versus kind of a director who say you talk, you stop here, you do this, you do that. It's kind of choreographed, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak, rather than genuinely engaging the class in a discussion to seek the truth. Whatever it is that we are discussing, we need to find out the truth about it.
Very good. Very good. You know, the interesting thing, I was listening to you and you were talking about your experience at school and how your mother came and took up for you. And
Yes.
I've had a similar experience at a younger age when the principal smacked me across my hands with a ruler,
Oh.
and I went home and told my mother,
Mm.
and my mother was irate, and she went up to the school and she told the principal. She said, "If you ever put your hands on him again, this is going to be a different conversation." And so, where I'm getting to is that we have learned through example how to deal with injustices nonviolently. You
Correct.
you express yourself, you take a stand where you are, and then you say, now the next move's on you.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
if you
That
make the
come.
wrong move, there's going to be a problem. And so
Exactly.
it just it rang in my head because both of us have a similar focus. And when we speak about different types of focus, if somebody was to walk up to you and they said to you, "What is quarantine racism educational services about?" What would you say to them?
It's a company that provides equitable training to teachers, educators, and administrators to help them guide their classes and provide for their students more effectively and more efficiently. That
Very good.
it's easy to discipline everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You can, as you said, smack them. You can, suspend them. You can expel them. Then it's so easy. All it takes is to sign the paper, and the student is done.
Mm-hmm.
The real question: have you done your job as an educator? The answer is no. So the school is overwhelmed with, the number of students, the policy updates, the day-to-day difficulties that they face. They need someone, a company like Quarantine Racism, to help them with their class management, to help them build healthy racial relationships with their students.
Mm-hmm.
The answer is not discipline. The answer is building relationships. To do that, you need two things: you need training and time. While time is time, nobody can, manage it, or nobody can grant you more of it, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Training is available, which will help you minimize the time. So rather than learning on the student's dime through trial and error,
Mm.
training course
Mm.
that you can take. The training course is, priced well, $297 for the standard and $497 for the executive track. If, these prices are out of reach for any school, I'm more than happy to help them write a grant and receive funding to purchase these courses. Just last year, I, wrote grants worth of $46,000, all for educational programs, and I won them all. And I'm happy to help any school who wants to invest in, professional training, professional growth for their teachers, and help them build better learning spaces, not classrooms, but learning spaces. The school is, a concept beyond just classrooms. And students don't come to the classroom just with their backpacks. They come with trauma, they come with their culture, they come with their experiences. And I'm not talking about high or middle school, I'm talking starting preschool.
Mm-hmm.
Each student is a whole person. Just because they are younger than us, it doesn't mean that they are less than us. They are community members, stakeholders. They need to be treated as such to help them learn so as we as educators can achieve our objective and give back to the community.
Excellent, excellent. So, in a nutshell, we focus on minimizing classroom conflict. That's essentially what we do. So, with that in mind, there's always post conflict
Oh,
or
absolutely.
potential post conflict. And so, what parallels do you see between post conflict that's associated with community building and the work that you do as a brand ambassador for Quarantine Racism Educational Services?
I started my journey as a scholar, especially after I moved here to the United States. Part of my career was working as the Minister of the Environment in Iraq post the Hussein regime. And I experienced firsthand the connection between post conflict, where everybody would think the post conflict situation is a peaceful one. So the conflict has ended, and that's it. We are now in the peaceful phase and we are good to go. The situation is the post conflict is a gray area
Mm-hmm.
and requires a lot of effort to build on it to move on to the peace area,
Mm-hmm.
or to peace era. Similarly, just because someone completed a training regarding racial justice, it doesn't mean that they are going to implement it 100% correctly. There is the back and forth. There are cases that are unique. There are ever evolving issues that requires adjustment. So both situations requires investment in building and rebuilding. And that's the trick here. Oftentimes, at least according to the World Bank, the first year of post-conflict situation oftentimes show a relapse back to conflict. Most countries relapse back to conflict either during the first year after you know um, the ceasefire, or
Mm-hmm.
5 years after, because they stop investing. They think
Mm-hmm.
they accomplished it. Similarly, just celebrating, the Black Month, it doesn't make the teacher or the educator equitable when it comes to building relationships. These nuances requires constant investment on behalf of the teacher, and keep adding to the relationship that they are building.
Mm-hmm.
If we think of relationships more or less like family relationships, there are days when the family is celebrating and happy. There are other days when they are arguing. There are other days when they are experiencing a sad situation or a difficult situation. All these relationships and intricacies requires investment, requires active listening, open communication, requires restorative justice practices. So rather than, for example, suspending the student,
Mm-hmm.
you can adapt, um, you know, a community circle
Mm-hmm.
where the student would share, what went into their minds, why they behave the way they behave. And you can allow their colleagues to tell them how they felt about it. And they can all agree on what's the next step.
Mm-hmm.
Humanizing education by treating the student as a whole person, not someone who is less of a person, is the step forward. And similarly, treating the country as a whole.
Hmm.
one unit rather than a fraction. We have a conflict here, so in this area, but the rest of the country is peace, and that should be okay. So, adapting this holistic approach will allow us to see thoroughly, will enable us to provide, concrete results versus hit and miss results.
Absolutely. Now, you've already kind of touched on this a little bit, but I want to make sure the audience understands this perspective. You've worked across different systems, government, nonprofits, as well as academia. And I know you are a specialist when it comes to leadership. And so, from a personal perspective, how do you adapt your leadership style to promote inclusion and equity in government, nonprofits, as well as academia?
By empowerment, you
Mm-hmm.
empower your team, whether your team, consists of students or employees, soldiers, whomever, is involved with you. Empowerment is the key. So, being a leader, it simply means that you are looking for the next generation of leaders to be
Mm-hmm.
empowered and to have their opportunity. So, active listening is key here to identify, the strength of each team member and allow them their full potential to, let's say, manage a project, pursue funding, write the paper they want, say the burning question they have in mind, and discuss it with the class without anyone laughing or undermining them. Um, that leads me to the importance of creating a safe environment.
Mm-hmm.
Again, regardless of what team you are leading, that team needs to have trust in you as a leader to come and share with you what's on their mind, what's troubling them, what's
Mm-hmm.
hindering their progress. So if the teacher in this case, you know, um, is very formal, one way street, unapproachable, they would miss tremendously on opportunities to help their students excel. Similarly, if the program manager, the director, they don't have an open door policy, they will miss out on ways to empower their team. If, as a leader, I hold on to all the ropes, and I don't share anything, then by the end of the day, whatever mission I'm trying to achieve, I won't achieve it.
Mm-hmm.
No one person, no matter how great they are, can achieve something by themselves. They have to achieve it as a team. And that's the power of allowing every single member of the team to try and fail and then succeed. To try and fail is better than not to try and not to experience it.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the point of views that I bring to my classes, I bring to my teams, and I feel that they align with quarantine racism, and that's why I wanted to join and wanted to become a member of such a great company.
Well, thank you very much, and we're glad to have you.
Thank you.
But we also know that you are an expert, especially in designing culturally responsive educational programs. Um, so, with that in mind, what do you believe is the most overlooked element when others are teaching about racism and bias?
The issue with teaching racism and bias is teaching it from the perspective of the teacher and their perspective. So
Mm,
this is my experience. And because
mm,
I'm the teacher, I'm going to tell you how to experience it.
mm,
To teach racial justice, it needs to be done through a circle where everybody, sit on an equal footing. You have to set the tone for such a topic. And again, it doesn't come from lecturing or pretending or, I relate to you by such and such. It comes from embodying it. We are all equal. We are all here to share. Let's start the process. Case studies, are central to this, concept. And
mhm,
by case studies, I don't mean just, historical ones,
mm,
lived experiences. What happened to my learners? Did they go through it or not? And I need to create a safe environment for them to share it.
mm,
So making it a student-centered experience versus teacher-centered experience or textbook-centered experience, wherever you like to call it in that regard, is you know, the breaking point. If it's all about the students, from the students to the students, then we are on our way to exploring it, to decoding it, if you would like, in a meaningful way.
mhm,
Now, what's the objective? Why we are doing it, student centered? Because we want to empower the student. We want to give them the tool. If they feel, they were judged based on their race, we want to give them the tools to, alter the situation, to amend, to present themselves as they are and be proud of it. So, having these conversations and discussions through student-centered approach
mhm,
is, the way to explore it. There is a book that honestly I keep going back and forth to. I know almost maybe all of our learners heard of it, but the beauty of it, it's called The Pedagogy of the Oppressed
mm.
by Paulo Freire.
Yep, I read that.
Basically, you have to understand the issue from the perspective of the person who went through it, not the person who is trying to read and learn about it from a book.
Mhm,
You know, honestly, there were classes that I attended where I noticed, because part of my job was observing teacher teach. The teacher would repeat the same joke with each class coming in. It's like even the joke is memorized.
mhm,
What they don't know is that the learner feels it. They feel that this is something rehearsed.
mhm,
Uh, Plus, by the end of the class, anyone has a question here? This is not learning. You haven't facilitated anything. You've been talking for an hour, you rehearsed every single thing. And, by the end of the day, when students are tired, honestly, from listening to the teacher, they don't have the bandwidth to ask a question.
mhm.
So, adhering to these outdated teaching methods doesn't help anybody and doesn't facilitate learning. And by the end of the day, that's why you see students acting up, because they can feel it's not authentic.
Yeah, it's interesting. You spoke about student centered versus teacher centered, and it reminded me of my very first year teaching, very first quarter, and I was failing 95% of my students, and they were all black students. And go down to the principal's office, and he wants to talk to me about my grades. And he's like, "Well, why are so many people failing in your class? And I told him, I said, well, I stand in front of the classroom and I teach them, and it must be them that's not getting it. And so I actually went back to my room and I started thinking about that. And I didn't know anything about student centered, but the conclusion that I came to was somebody needs to be making an A in my classroom. That's the bottom line. Otherwise, I have taught nothing. And so I went back and I adjusted my grades, and I wound up having about 5 or 6 A's. And when the kids came back and saw their grades, their reaction was different towards me because I was a very strict teacher when I started out. I don't want to hear it, not in here. I have to teach you all how to survive, so we're not going to play around. Um, but you're absolutely right. That is one of the biggest problems is ourselves as teachers, and as educators. And if we're not able to reflect on that, it has an adverse impact not only on the students, but you talked about classroom observations. It will also have an adverse impact on your observation, which means it's going to have an adverse impact on your job. And so, just to shift gears a little bit, I want to introduce a new term that I'd like for you to talk about: environmental sustainability and racial justice. And what does that intersection look like when it comes to marginalized communities?
These topics are always intertwined, whether we like it or not. The marginalized communities are the ones that will pay or are maybe paying the highest price for unsustainable practices. They don't have the resources, they don't have the tools they need to you know uh, present the impact of unsustainable practices on them. Environmental justice is another way or another layer of racial injustice, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, you would notice that, areas that are occupied by Black communities, poor Black communities, are polluted the most,
Mm-hmm.
not because of their race, but because they lack the resources. They lack the advocacy. Who's going to talk? Who's going to present them? While they are busy day in and day out fighting for putting food on their tables.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the major issue. And then, with climate change issues, with natural disasters, they get hit the most. Again, if you have limited resources and then you experience something massive like a hurricane, you have very limited chances of dealing with it. Furthermore, if you add another layer, lack of education, so they don't know, for example, because they are busy working 24/7 or finding resources to feed their families.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they don't have enough insurance, maybe they applied for some type of insurance that doesn't provide full coverage. They don't know where to go to ask for help. All of these issues combined make their areas vulnerable. So if we want to think of a vulnerable community, it's not just because of lacking resources. It's lacking resources, lacking education, and facing challenging natural disasters. Furthermore, their health will be impacted. There were many case studies to show that so many Black communities experience cancer cases because next door is a huge big factory that is releasing pollutant to their environment.
Mhm.
Why this huge big factory was there? Because it was easier to get to their neighborhood, due to lack of representation, lack of advocacy, lack of resources. And it took a while for the research community to understand that there is something called environmental injustice. You treat the environment where certain, race, certain community experience it differently, and you don't allow them to voice their experience, or you marginalize it just because of their race and their background.
And I'm glad I'm glad this question was posed, because one of the things that we have at Quarantine Racism Educational Services is racial equity lesson plans.
Hmm.
And in some of those grade levels, that's what they talk about is environmental injustices. Like, for example, in Louisiana, um, where they have
New
all.
Jersey.
Well, I was just thinking Camden City, which is not far from me. And I remember one day I was going to the Home Depot, and
Hmm.
there was this black smoke just streaming in the sky. And I was
Yes.
like, what the heck is this? And they said there was one of the factories in Camden City that was on fire. Now, actually, they settled with Camden City for a couple $1 million and they had to clean it up. But that's what happens. People who are impoverished, like you said before, people who don't have the representation, that's where you find it, because it's easier to get in there. And the sad part is, it impacts their health. But what they don't understand, and I'm gonna really get into something here. What they don't understand is they have set up the black community to be consumers.
Mm.
And if you kill off the consumers, you have nobody else to purchase your stuff. So it makes it makes no sense at all what they're doing. It's almost like their hatred for marginalized communities has backfired on them, because now you don't even have, because it's a well-known fact that marginalized communities don't gravitate towards education and higher education levels, and you don't even have those people there to work those jobs that you need to maintain those factories. I was looking at the paper the other day, and they were talking about this community in Florida, and they said the community in Florida reported all of the immigrants, illegal immigrants, to ICE, and ICE came and took them all away. And then they found out that they had nobody to construct their new houses and their new buildings. So, when it comes to this hatred thing, um, you know, these people, I'm just going to say, these people are ignorant. They don't think things through. And I know this is a little off topic, but capitalism cannot exist without consumers, period. And this is a nation that has an economical system that is based off of capitalism. If even with the immigrants, they have to buy stuff. They have to buy food. They have to buy transportation. They have no idea that. Okay, let me move forward. I'm about to get a little heated here.
Dr. Campbell, before we move forward, you see, that's our role as educators here.
Mhm.
Oftentimes Black students are kind of encouraged to become athletes,
Yep.
which is great. But why no one asks them if they want to go to college instead? Why no one asks them if, do you want to become an engineer? Do you want to
Mhm.
become a doctor, a scientist? Why there is always this kind of stereotype, preconceived notion that they all should be athlete? You know, pausing the question, asking the question from, someone who they perceive to be a leader, in this case, the teacher, is a very important thing,
Mhm.
because it shows that the teachers believe in them.
That's right.
They are day in and day out the person that they see every day, talking to them about knowledge, talking to them about education and goals and academics. They believe enough in them to see the engineer in them, to see the doctor in them, the surgeon, the physician, the entrepreneur, whatever the case is.
Mhm.
But to immediately assume or encourage them to become athletes, point, full stop, that's really painful, at least in my perspective, because you never know, what their potential is, what they could achieve,
Right.
and how many people in their community they can help.
You're absolutely right. I have a 12-year-old godson who has been in my life since he was this big, and I mean been in my life extensively. And now he is 5'9", and he's a big boy. He's a big boy.
Yes, I
And
can imagine, almost 6 foot.
yeah, and the thing I say to him is, you don't have to be an athlete just because you're big, just because you're tall. I said, matter of fact, you don't even have to play sports professionally on a college level. I said, but what you do have to do is you have to decide how you're going to earn your living. I said, now that's something you're going to have to decide. And I think this is why parents and parental influence is important, because one of the things that I did to him was, as a child, I used to buy him Lego sets.
Hmm.
And the teacher and me, we would build them together first. And then I taught him to follow the directions. And he started following the directions and he built everything. And that's when I knew he was going to be okay. One, you got to follow directions when you're in school.
Exactly.
If you're working a job, you got to follow directions. Even if you own a business, you still have to follow some directions. But you also have to be able to look at the system and pull it together and pull it apart. Um, but the media doesn't do us a favor. They don't show marginalized children or even adults doing something other than athletics. You
Mhm.
know, like Deion Sanders' son, who's a quarterback for the Browns. I forgot his name, but he's all over the media, and they're talking about how Deion Sanders messed him up. But, let's get somebody on here who's a financial person, and leading their son or daughter through. We don't see any of those examples, and that's how they kind of engineer our children. I even have to knock the STEM programs, science,
Yes.
technology, and engineering, because it's nothing wrong with those concepts, but don't stop there. Teach them to be the CEO of the
Mm.
STEM company or one of the stock owners, you know. And I'm just going to put it out here. One of the things that companies will do is they will hire you with your expertise. And anything you develop under their umbrella belongs to them.
To them. Mhm.
I remember I was repairing cash registers one time. I used to do that for a living. And I came up with, they was having this problem with this instrument, and I came up with how to fix it. And the engineer comes down a couple of weeks and said, "Oh, this is how we do it." I was like, "Oh, that's, what do you think I've been trying to tell y'all?" But of course, as a white person, he got the promotion. he got the
Yes.
extra money, but the
Mm.
idea originated with me. And
From you.
so this is something that we have to make sure our kids understand that they can do anything they want to do. And we have to,
Absolutely.
as parents, give them those tools. And it doesn't have to be dancing, it doesn't have to be singing, it doesn't have to be playing football, it doesn't have to be playing basketball. You know, you could be a financial wizard. You could be a farmer. Why not be a farmer?
Mm.
You know, there's a lot of, you could be a politician. Why not be a politician? So there are a lot of other things, but I know that's a little off topic, but just kind of gets into my crawl space when I think about how society has been doing our children, and that's why it's important for us to do what we do. Now, I know you've had experiences where you've had to advocate for racial justice and equity, either in the community or the schools. How do you tell educators or even people in the community to express racial justice and equity?
Thank you for that question, Dr. Campbell. That is really one of the topics that I keep going back and forth to.
Mm-hmm.
It's very important to teach, whether the student is advocating for themselves, or, the teacher, to stick to the facts. Because this topic is very dear and near to our hearts, oftentimes we express it emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
Once we do that, then it becomes our problem. It becomes personal. It
Mm-hmm.
becomes a one time thing. It becomes, this is your point of view, so us versus them. But once you present a pattern, then that what, you know, uh, becomes the focal point of the discussion. When you talked about your experience fixing the issue, what jumped to my mind immediately is something I teach, my clients through the communication of success, and I talk about it also on my YouTube channel,
Mm-hmm.
is the power of documentation.
So wait a minute. So give us your website and your YouTube channel so we can find it.
Thank you. My YouTube channel is called The Communication of Success. So,
Mm-hmm.
YouTube at The Communication of Success. The channel is still growing. I do have 103 followers, and I'm proud of them and I'm grateful to them. What I talk about is how to deal with workplace issues, whether, the dynamic, the politics of the workplace, using language as your tool, how you
Mm-hmm.
communicate your success through difficult situations.
Mm-hmm.
And similarly, my website, it has the URL of the language of success.net. I try to, I wanted to choose the bigger umbrella, so to speak. But I provide, readers and viewers with tools and resources, what I call out of the box tools
Mm-hmm.
and resources to help them advocate for themselves. It's true, you can always go to human resources, you can always file a complaint. It doesn't mean that the situation ended right there, it's
Right.
going to continue. So, what I try to help, my readers, my viewers, with tools that will help them, first of all, empower themselves. Second, achieve maximum results with, minimum effort possible. If you think about, filing a complaint and how long that, takes, and the process, and you may get something, you may not get something, but you still have your voice, you still have a pen and paper handy, you still have your mind, your wit. You can engage in a dynamic way in the workplace that will promote your success. One way that we need to think about racial justice in the education sector. One, we need to document. So you need to show a pattern.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, when I have a discussion with my students around their grades, I don't just pick one test. I pick a pattern. I show them, for example, here is the topic you are failing. Here is the modality. You didn't achieve your goals in, let's say, unit 1 test, unit 2, unit 3. So that shows me a little bit of a pattern here. And I break it down for them. Here is your strength. Here is what you have within your tools, so to speak, to address this issue. And then we can have a better, um, you know, grade, or we can have kind of a balanced sheet, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But, uh, if you don't showcase the pattern, you are unable to begin with to pinpoint the situation. It sounds a little bit more or less like a root cause analysis, but for education, it goes deeper because it's not enough to show the root causes. You have to show the strength that the student need in order for him to, make a change or to
Mm-hmm.
improve the results. And then these strengths needs to come from within the student. So the answer should not be go take a course and spend that much in order for you to become good at math. You have to analyze their math skills. What's their strongest suit in math? Is it equations, multiplications, whatever it is? And how can we use it to help them improve their performance? So, not only the result, not the test, but the performance overall.
Mm-hmm.
So, I used to, collect all sorts of data on my students' performance. And by the end of the day, I created a performance tracking system for the school, for the entire school, more than 250 students, just to pinpoint, some pattern to help me understand how can I help this student achieve success? What should I do as an educator? And oftentimes, I write my report with the data, involved, share it with the dean, with the chairperson, the teaching team members, to help them help the student. It's not about, just how you teach. It's about how to leverage the strengths that the student has for them to address their weaknesses. And you do it through data driven analysis to come up with the areas needing improvement and the strengths they have to address it.
Very good. Very good. Well, Dr. Momin, we've been Dr. Moomin, excuse me. We've been on for quite some time. And so in closing, I just wanted to know, do you have any final thoughts for our audience?
I want to tell every teacher, educator, and administrator, first of all, they are not alone. We are here to help them. We are here to support them. We thank them for their hard work and dedication. If they need anything, they can reach out to you, they can reach out to me. The easiest way to reach out to me is through my LinkedIn. It's Mishkat Moumin, through LinkedIn. And I'm available to help them if they have a question regarding, writing a grant or a funding opportunity to better their schools. I'm more than happy to help them if they have questions about, the courses we offer at Quarantine Racism. Both you and I are available to help them. We just want them to feel that they are supported, they are appreciated, and we are, available to help them and support them.
Amen. Well, once again, Dr. Moumin, I want to thank you for being on today. I want to thank you for taking your time out today. Um, you definitely gave us some golden nuggets, especially when you talked about when you were working in the different systems and how space, empowerment, and teamwork were pinnacle um, in ensuring that this is the vehicle that people need to do or need to use to adapt their leadership style. And so I myself, and I know our audience is going to look forward to you speaking in the future. And so have a great day. And once again, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the